Hi, VencoreWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, December 16th. It's been quite a mild month here in December in the I-95 corridor, way above normal up through the midpoint of the month. We will have a temporary setback, a very noticeable setback in the temperature pattern this weekend with a major chill down in the Friday, Saturday, Sunday time period. Highs on Saturday, for example, will struggle to reach 40 degrees in much of the I-95 corridor. However, the warm weather pattern will re-emerge next week. Probably loads of records will be set again by the middle of next week in much of the eastern half of the nation. It looks like it'll stay warm right into late next week, Christmas Day, next Friday, and perhaps even right into the month of January. There are some signs for a possible temperature pattern change in January, but the overall warm weather pattern will continue, it looks like, right into the early part of January, despite a major setback this weekend in the Friday, Saturday, Sunday time period. This is actually from last night's Zero-Z GFS Ensemble run. It's the temperature anomaly pattern for Christmas Day, a week from this Friday, and much the same with all kinds of warm, perhaps even record-breaking conditions here in the eastern half of the nation, represented on this particular map with the reds and oranges way above normal. This is next Friday afternoon, Christmas Day. Meanwhile, the western U.S., quite cold, the opposite from the east. A lot of snowfall out there. There is some cold air around. It's basically bottled up in the western U.S. and Alaska and Greenland for the next couple of weeks. Eventually, some of that cold air should reach the eastern U.S. Let's jump ahead another week to New Year's Eve. And here we go. This is the GFS Ensemble run from last night for New Year's Eve temperature anomalies. And indeed, still very warm pattern in the eastern U.S., represented here by the orange and yellows, and colder than normal in the western U.S. or near normal. This is smoothed out somewhat as time goes on. Climatology plays more of a role in these longer range forecast anomaly patterns. Both of these maps from tropicaltidbits.com. But the bottom line here, it looks like, except for this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the overall warm pattern looks like it'll continue right into the month of January for the eastern half of the nation. Well, let's continue to look ahead before we get to the short-term weather forecast here for the I-95 corridor. What we're looking at here is the 10 millibar temperature analysis way up there in the atmosphere from the view of the North Pole. The North Pole right in this region right here. And as is typical for this time of the year, we have basically a polar vortex, a low pressure in the way up high in the stratosphere. This is something we look at more and more during the winter season, the stratospheric temperature pattern, because a stratospheric warming event over the North Pole could signal eventual cold air spillage down into the northern latitudes, into the middle and northern latitudes, including here in the U.S. Once this polar vortex is displaced by high pressure or warmer temperatures or stratospheric warming, that could signal a change in the overall temperature pattern. This is the current condition right here. Again, a pretty typical cold polar vortex sitting right on top of the North Pole region. Now let's take a look at 10 days from now, the forecast in the stratosphere. And here we go. Notice the orange and yellows here creeping closer to the North Pole, and meanwhile that polar vortex kind of being pushed off in this direction. This is the indication of a possible stratospheric warming event between now and, let's say, 10 days or 2 weeks from now. And that kind of a stratospheric warming event could result in a temperature pattern change downstream, perhaps the first or second week in the month of January. Perhaps this is a signal for a change to colder here in the eastern U.S. come the first or second week of January. We'll of course monitor any potential stratospheric warming event here at VencoreWeather.com over the next couple of weeks. Well, let's now focus on the short term. We have a significant rain event coming here into the Mid-Atlantic region for a Thursday, probably at least a half an inch of rain, anywhere from a half an inch to an inch up and down the I-95 corridor, all associated with a very strong cold front that will usher in much colder air for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But again, that will be just a temporary setback in the overall warm temperature pattern we've been experiencing here in the eastern U.S. Record warmth likely to return to much of the eastern half of the nation by the middle of next week. This is the forecast for tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, based on last night's 0Z GFS model run. The blues here, snow up in the south central, southeastern Canada. Very cold air mass crossing the Great Lakes by tomorrow afternoon and evening. Meanwhile, here in the east, the greens here indicate rainfall here headed towards the I-95 corridor. Again, this is the forecast for tomorrow morning. Let's now jump ahead 12 hours. Well, here's the forecast for tomorrow evening, Thursday evening. Along that cold front, looks like low pressure will develop right along that frontal boundary zone. That will enhance the rainfall here in the I-95 corridor. Again, a pretty significant rainfall coming Thursday into Thursday night. A half an inch to an inch, maybe even a rumble of thunder as that colder air mass presses to the south and east, crossing the Great Lakes and finally reaching the Mid-Atlantic region by Friday. Well, let's go another 12 hours ahead. All of these forecast maps available on tropicaltidbits.com. This is the Friday morning forecast map. By this time, that cold front is off the east coast. Colder air is pressing in, thanks in large part to the strong, cold Canadian high pressure system. We haven't talked too much about these kind of systems this time of the year. Again, this will be centered over the northern plains come early Friday morning. Much colder air, probably highs in the 40s for the most part in the I-95 corridor. Let's jump ahead another 12 hours to Friday evening's forecast map. Well, here we go by Friday evening. Notice some blues showing up, some lake effect snowfall showing up here in the mountainous areas just downstream of the Great Lakes. This should turn out to be probably the first serious lake effect snow event of the early winter season here, with still relatively warm lake water temperatures and cold air crossing on top of it. That'll generate quite a decent lake effect snow event just downstream of the Great Lakes. Again, will be quite breezy and chilly here in the northeastern part of the country. Don't expect to see any flurries crossing the mountains into the I-95 corridor, but certainly much colder weather coming for Friday and especially Saturday into Sunday. Well, let's go another 12 hours ahead and end here with the Saturday morning forecast map. Notice some streamers here. This is all lake effect type snowfall across northern Pennsylvania into central New York State. Saturday will be a blustery day with pretty noticeable gusty northwest winds here south and east of the mountains in the I-95 corridor. Temperatures on Saturday should struggle to reach the 40-degree mark. It remains quite chilly on Sunday, but then milder on Monday and probably some record warmth by the middle part of next week. And again, it looks like it'll stay quite warm at the end of next week, Christmas Day on Friday, perhaps even record-breaking warmth. And in all likelihood, the warm weather pattern will last another week into the first part of January. Perhaps the first or second week of January we'll see a change in the weather pattern to colder in the east, but quite warm pretty much for the rest of the month of December, except for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's it for now. For VencoreWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.